the next 4 years of a retired Senator. I had to kind of remind myself that I'm not making a presidential speech, that I'm just giving a speech for my father's retirement. And so I was just thinking about the fact that my father began working for Connectrix, as you see, when it was still Ontario Hydro. And at that time, I was only 4 years old when we began that job. And none of us would have imagined that 34 years later that I would be the other Dr. Mendy in the room, but not a chemist at all. Philosopher instead, to give a speech at his retirement function. And during those years, since he started, the organization changed so much, it became Connectrix from Ontario Hydro, and his role also changed a lot. And through that time, our family has always known him as a person of incredibly stable character. And he's often brought work home with him, but he's never really brought the stresses of the workplace home with him. So neither during my childhood nor as an adult can I remember him ever saying that he couldn't do something important, or even something that wasn't important, because of work. So it was easy to forget the extent of his responsibilities at work. Actually, I just found out today what he actually does. I didn't
Care to share?
So I only recently gained a full grasp of what he did. I used to call and get his voicemail that said life cycle management. I thought he was a guru to help people through the aging process and helping them become older. And then I realized, he told me what it was. So that just shows you how humble he is, because you have to really inquire to find out the extent of what he actually does and the importance of his work. He's not someone who boasts about it. So as a son, I can say that Hussein, through his time at Connectrix, was always able to maintain this admirable balance of work and family life. As I already said, his work, we never felt that his work made him unavailable to us in any way. And even after I left Toronto many, many years ago, first to Montreal and Chicago, I could always count on the fact that he would answer my calls, or that he would call me back within a few minutes, which always amazed me. Because I have a hard time doing that, and I'm not a manager of as many things. Old friends, distant family members, long-lost acquaintances, people in need have always known that they can count on him. And a huge part of this is due to his personality, his sense of responsibility, his good nature, his capacity for love and caring. But I also have to give credit to Connectrix, because you provided him with a career where he was able to stay geographically rooted, but also be constantly challenged and engaged in new projects and initiatives. At Connectrix, my father was able to develop the unique combination of qualities that I know you valued in him. His scientific knowledge and sense, I'm still going to hold on to that honor. His managerial skills, his gifts for positive personal interaction, and his confidence that he can get a job done. I think the combination of stability, challenge, and growth that Connectrix offered him has given him the kind of work environment that allowed him to come home a happy and fulfilled person. And of course, I imagine having colleagues that he likes and can count on has made a really huge difference. Some of these colleagues I've known since childhood, like Otto Herman and Amir Hussain. Some are no longer with us, like Keith Curtis or Ivy Lowe, but they all provided him a lot of support in their own ways, and I know that that made his job and his work life also. It's always been a place where he's felt at home and well supported. And then the last several years, Connectrix has expanded its connections in India, and that's allowed my father to spend more time at home with his mother. One of the things that he's most concerned with in life is the well-being of his mother. So the fact that Connectrix has allowed him to do this has really been invaluable, because it's allowed him to combine his work here in Canada with caring for his mom in India. That's been a huge gift from Connectrix, I think. If there's anything that he might have regretted in his years at this job, it might be that over time his work did shift a lot towards managerial responsibilities. And on the one hand, this has allowed him to exercise these gifts in managerial work that I think might have been surprising, even for him. But on the other hand, it pulled him away from what I think is one of the great loves of his life, science. Because whatever the professional titles may have been over the course of the years, he's always been and remains to this day a scientist at heart. And science for him has never been just a geeky obsession with intellectual puzzles. I mean, it is that too, definitely. But over and above that, it's always been a way of life and a part of his overall humanism. Something, science, that he thinks is a key part of improving the situation of us as a people, as a human race. To use one of Salman Rushdie's famous phrases, my father is one of India's midnight's children. He was born just a few months after India's independence. And that was a time of great hope when the belief was strong that nations and peoples could shape a better future by using tools of reason and scientific and technological discovery. So at the young age of 16, he left his family to travel to a distant town to study chemistry at the Indian Institute of Technology. His parents were very supportive, as they always have been. And a few years later, he came to Canada to start his PhD. I think he might have gone to the US, but he, through a fluke of history, he was an American citizen and was afraid in the 70s of being drafted into the Vietnam War, and so ended up in Waterloo. So his intention was always to go back to India, and as things turned out, he stayed. But he's always retained that belief from that era that scientific education, the exercise of reason, the use of, and their use for humanistic ideals are crucial for improving our individual and collective lives. And this task of teaching people about science, debunking pseudoscience and superstition, challenging people to think more clearly, is a task from which I don't think he'll ever retire. When my siblings and I were growing up, we caught many glimpses of science in practice. I remember trips to his lab from the age of 4 until just a few months ago, and he always gives these tours with a lot of pride and excitement and interest. And still, when I walk by a lab at the college where I teach, the smell of the lab always reminds me of those childhood tours. I remember in my childhood planters exploding in the house because of particularly volatile fertilizers that he had invented. I remember in the car, actually, on the way. Luckily, it didn't make it home. I remember liquid nitrogen magic shows during class show and tells or birthday parties that finally allowed me to boast that my scientist father is as cool as my classmates' policeman father. But even more than these examples of science at work, our lives have always been filled by the example of a scientist at heart. Someone who's intellectually responsible and rigorous, and at the same time inquisitive and energetic. And above all, someone who cares about the future of humankind. Try as he might, with exhortation and chemistry kits and trips to the science center, my father could not make a scientist out of me. But his scientific ideals have had a huge impact on my understanding of the world. So it may seem a little strange and ironic, as Paul mentioned, that one of my father's goals in retirement is to spend more time writing poetry and stories. Scientists aren't really known for that kind of thing. But he's always combined his scientific passion with a strong literary interest. And this is part of the humanism I mentioned earlier, his faith in human creativity and intellectual growth, and his interest in ideas of all sorts. And maybe, although he's not ready to admit it, his writing might be a sign that he knows somewhere deep inside that science does not have the answers to everything. And so I'm sure that in retirement his best work is yet to come. So congratulations, Baba. Thank you to Kenneth Briggs. And let's enjoy the rest of the evening.